For more details, we are now being joined by Dr. Gilbert Doctorow from Berlin. He is an international affairs analyst. He's an author and also an historian. Dr. Doctorow, let me first ask you this. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that the presence of President Zelensky was not needed at the U.S.-Russia talks. Now, does this show that Moscow and Washington are heading towards an agreement without Ukraine and Europe? I'm not really sure if you heard that, Doctor, but my first...
I didn't hear. I didn't hear.
Can you hear me now, though?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So, U.S. President Donald Trump has said that the presence of President Zelensky was not needed at the U.S.-Russia talks. I want to ask you, does this show that Moscow and Washington are heading towards an agreement without Ukraine and Europe?
I think we have to look at what took place in Riyadh to understand, to have an answer to your question. The world at large is looking at the Trump points as being a settlement of the Ukraine crisis in one blow, in one strike. That is absolutely wrong. The concept that we saw rolled out in Riyadh by the American delegation was very different and was far more realistic. It understands that you cannot have the resolution of a problem as complex, as difficult, as sensational as the one we're talking about, the end to the war in Ukraine, without having a measure of trust and a level of diplomatic interchange that do not exist today. In fact, the American negotiating position was to divide the topics for discussion into three baskets. The first one being to restore diplomatic relations to a level where there are functioning officials in the embassies in the respective countries who can help see through to the end the complex talks that are involved in solving Ukraine and other very topical issues between the two superpowers. The second basket, which would come only after the first basket, is to address specific areas of common interest, including resolution of the Ukraine war, but not exclusively that. It is, and why these different measures? Again, confidence building. You cannot have a settlement of long duration by parties that have no trust in one another. And by extending the talks to include areas like cooperation in the Northern Sea route, in the Arctic, in hydrocarbons, in space cooperation, all of these, and of course, we must hope for cooperation and restoration of arms limitation talks. All of these various topics entail the constant flow of people back and forth, of experts back and forth between the two countries, the United States and Russia, which are procedurally important because they establish trust. And only then in the third phase, there would be discussion of big geopolitics, how the new world order will look. So there's no reason whatsoever for any other parties than the United States and Russia to have been present at these initial talks. They were not about how the war ends.
While you say they are not about how the war ends, but the ending of the war and the Ukraine deal is what the world eagerly awaits. So what is the most likely timeline for a Ukraine deal? Is it Easter or is it the Victory Day in May 9th?
I'd say it's any time within the coming 6 months. There are a lot of difficulties to overcome. It is, I think, doubtful that Mr. Zelensky will be present at the table representing Ukraine. So the resolution of who exactly represents Ukraine at these negotiations is one of the first tasks. And the notion that Zelensky would sign a peace agreement was rejected categorically by the Russians because, well, he has no legitimate authority. So that is the first thing that has to be resolved when we set a timeline. As regards the conduct of the war itself, it is likely that it can go on as long as 6 months, though many military experts, particularly in the outside mainstream, speak of destruction of the Ukrainian forces, the crumbling of the front. Frankly speaking, that is not happening for a number of reasons that we don't have time on this show to go into, but it's not happening. The Ukrainians have sufficient weapons delivered to them by Biden before he departed office to keep on going for a while. They have sufficient reserves particularly of young, untapped resources, 18 to 25, to keep on going for a while. So within this coming 6 months, there will be a settlement of the war, but exactly when it would be irresponsible to give a date.
Okay, Dr. Gilbert, thank you so much for joining us on the show today with your analysis.
No, thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.